Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Purple Wayw Podcast. My name is Paris, and today I have the pleasure to speak to Lisa Rose Muller. Lisa, how are you?
Yes, good, thank you. Apart from the freezing weather.
I know, tell me about it. Indeed. It's so nice to have you. And I would like to start with your background because you do have an extensive career as a career coach and then also working with young professionals and students regarding their career.
Yes, yes. Well, and I haven't always done this. So when I first left university, I knew I wanted to go and live and work overseas.
Mhm.
I thought I would go to an English-speaking country, but I ended up in Japan.
Wow.
So, but actually, I'm really glad that happened now. And I actually spent nearly 5 years living and working in Japan, teaching English, and then training up new teachers that were coming in and helping them with culture shock and so on. So that was quite a lot of one-to-one work.
Yeah.
Then when I came back from that, I was living in London for a while, and I kind of, through happenstance, I stumbled upon a job with Visit Scotland,
Mhm.
but based in London. And I started just covering for someone who was off sick, and then ended up staying and worked my way up and was managing that centre. Um, and that was again lots of one-to-one work in managing staff and working with them. And then it was round about that time I began to reflect myself on what I really wanted to do, and I
Mhm.
reflected on what I'd enjoyed so far in what I'd done. And I realized it was a lot of the one to one working with people and
Mm.
just helping them work through different issues and even thinking about their purpose, their direction. And
Yeah.
that led me to thinking, make a choice between either HR or careers.
Mhm.
HR would have paid me a lot more money, I've got to
Is
be
it?
honest.
Okay, interesting. Uh-huh.
The kind of this path I took is one I often say to students to think about, because I did some work shadowing in both areas
Mhm.
and kind of spoke to people in both areas until I kind of made up my mind and decided. And I thought, no, actually, the working in higher education, working with students, was the way I wanted to go. So I've done that for some time
Yeah.
now, working in the Career Centre at University of East Anglia down in Norwich, and now working with MBA students at University of
Mhm.
Edinburgh. And about 6 years ago, I myself went down to
Mhm.
part-time because I thought I'd like to also do my own thing. So I do freelance career and leadership coaching now as well.
Amazing. Yeah. Present, you do freelance career coaching, and also you have worked with the London School of Economics, the University of St Andrews, and also, as you said, the University of Edinburgh, right?
That's right. Yes, that's right.
It's
LSE.
extensive career. I like it.
And
LSE.
it's interesting, working with the different universities and seeing different institutions and how they work as well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It must be very interesting. Yeah. So, one of the first questions I do want to ask you, what are some common issues and troubles that you hear from the students that you work with when it
hmm
comes to their career?
Yes, yeah. I mean, to be honest, one of the common ones that I get, and I've got over the years, is people really not knowing what they want to do. And I think we live in an age
Mm.
now where we've got so many options with the internet. And it's
Hmm.
almost like option paralysis because there's so many options.
Yeah.
So it's like rabbit in headlights. So that's definitely one, not knowing clearly. And
Hmm.
that's because a lot of the time they don't know themselves yet. So that is our starting point, and
Yeah.
we work from there rather than look at a catalogue of jobs and pick one, which, how could you ever
Hmm.
do that anyway? So that's definitely a top one. And then it's other practical things like, oh, can I get feedback on my CV or cover letter or LinkedIn profile? Or can I practice interviews? And then I guess from international
Hmm.
students, who obviously there's a lot, many of them I work with too. Many of them are interested in trying to work in the UK. So there's questions around that too.
Yeah. Does does finance come into picture? Because, like, for example, you mentioned before you work with MBA students, right? And that's a massive investment on their kind of education, and then probably they don't want to go and work for like £25,000, salary. They want something more. So, do you also hear concerns about, like, the finance side?
Yes, and I would say, especially as you've just identified from the MBA students,
Yeah.
not so much from the other students, I have to say, that's not stuck in my mind, but from the MBAs, yes, quite rightly, because they have made that investment and so they're expecting. But for many of the MBAs, because they have experience already and quite significant experience, because they
Uh,
are more mature, they're between 35 and 40, that age bracket. So,
yeah.
they're it's quite different to working with undergraduates and masters because
Hmm.
what they apply for, it's not going to be the graduate schemes, the graduate routes. They'll be going in more as experienced hire associates. So it's
Yeah.
kind of slightly different. Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, interesting. And you said before that, like, one major issue that you identified, and when you talk to students, is that no direction. Okay. So how do we go about finding direction? How, like, is it important to also align one's career with their values and, you know, a sense of purpose?
I would say absolutely yes. And
Hmm.
and this is the issue. A lot of people, and not just students, to be honest, there's so many people that you meet out there, let's say adults,
Yeah.
but so many people you meet out there, when they hear what you do, they say, "Oh, I've never really kind of thought about who I am, the unique person that I am." I always say to people, we've all got different fingerprints. That
Mm.
is amazing. When you think 8 billion people in the world, we've all got different fingerprints. We are unique individuals. And
Yeah.
as we think about careers and things like that, it can be stressful and overwhelming. But instead, we just need to take a step back and first think about ourselves. And there are exercises, that we can do with people, to work out, okay, first of all, and I think of it like a compass. Each of us has got a unique compass. So one quadrant is interests,
Yeah.
and that's like topics. So for some people, it might be just not job titles, but fields of interest. So for
Mm.
some, it might be sports, history, politics, that's just general fields. So we get some questions until we work out what are those top main interests. For example, if you were stuck in a desert island with someone, and you knew you were going to be rescued, you didn't need to worry about that. And you were just sitting there waiting for the boat to arrive, and this other person you're with could only talk about three main topics. What would you really wish they were? So that's kind of one kind of question to help people think about actually what is it I like talking about, I like thinking about.
Hmm.
There's lots of other ones. So interest is one area, strengths is another,
Hmm.
working out what are people's top strengths, are they playing to them? Values that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
crucially, is another one. And so many people don't know what their values are,
Mm.
but there's exercises to work that out too. And the final one is career anchors. So that's the non-negotiables, the
Ah.
things, that, for example, they want the job to be in a multinational, or they want it to be a certain salary, or it has to be in London or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's taking time to work all that out. Once you've got a clearer picture on that, then you've got a much better focus on actually, this is who I am. You can show that to other people and kind of get them to say, what does this say to you in terms of jobs, etc. And there's more work. I won't take the time now to speak about it, but there's more work we do around the interests. Once we've mapped out those fields, then we hone in on, okay, now certain jobs within that, finding contacts from that, and so on. But
Yeah.
there is a process.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
yes, yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's a very interesting, and I think it's a very, it's a probably it's a, it's a principle, like it's a very fundamental question. And like, as you said, the compass, interest, strengths, values, and career anchors. And I think that's like, a first basic foundation to understand yourself and who you are, and then take it from there. And I think that's very important, and I think that will be useful for someone to start, then have an understanding of where they want to go.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I do just want to add very quickly, since I was talking about
Hmm.
Japan at the beginning,
Yeah.
just to link it to this Japanese concept that you might have heard of called
Hmm.
ikigai.
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And ikigai basically means finding joy in life through purpose. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the ikigai Venn diagram is really very interesting, but it talks about trying to find that intersection between doing what you love, you're good at it, the world needs it, and you'll get paid for it. So
Yeah.
it's finding that sweet spot. And then
Yeah.
once you find that, do that thing. But it's so interesting. I mean, there's so much on that as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Someone listening to this definitely will say, like, oh, but it's so difficult to find that niche market, that niche, that I will be good at. But like, career and, like, working is such a big part of our lives, right? So it's worth taking the time and also reaching out to a career coach to help you understand that, your ikigai, and in understanding your compass.
Totally, totally. I
Yeah.
can't emphasize that enough. They say that two-thirds of people in the UK believe they're in the wrong job, and it's the highest in Europe.
Jesus Christ.
Exact.
That's
Yeah,
mad. Yeah.
honestly, when I hear that, it just makes me feel so sad, really.
Yeah, of
And I
course.
just think, wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I do agree. In your opinion, right, what are some key personality traits that contribute to a long term career satisfaction and success?
Mm. Interesting question.
Mm.
Personality attributes. I mean, I suppose the first thing that comes to mind, I do say this to people, it's a quote I read
Mhm.
not that long ago, but and it's the three A's, so anyone should be able to remember it.
Okay.
But this quote said, it's your attitude,
Hmm.
not your aptitude,
Hmm.
that determines your altitude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. And I thought, wow, that is it. Spot on.
Yeah.
Because if you're thinking about personality traits, it's to do with mindset.
Yeah.
It's to do with motivation.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because I see so many times, and sometimes I feel myself internally getting frustrated because I can see the potential in people. I can see it. It's really, and but I can't force them to do things. I can't, of course, that's not my position.
Yeah.
But but those one and fear is
Mm.
the biggest barrier that kind of holds many of us back from doing things.
Yeah.
But a question I ask people is, if you knew you wouldn't fail,
Mm.
what would you do?
Yeah, that gives me goosebumps. I do agree with you. I think fear is one of the biggest kind of factors that keeps us from chasing what we want. You know, and yeah, no, I do agree with you on that. Um, do you think? How about the growth mindset? Like, do you think being proactive at your job, any job, is important, and have that growth mindset specifically?
Absolutely. And I mean, even if people are in a job where they're kind of feeling, oh, this isn't quite the right thing for me, and da da da, like this, and maybe they're beginning to look for other things, that's
Mhm.
all fine. But, adopting that growth mindset, even in that situation that might be difficult, the job's not quite the right fit, but then it's kind of thinking, okay, well, is there anything at all, even within this job, that I could change slightly, or I could suggest, oh, I could do this thing, like, for example, running, hosting podcasts or whatever
Yeah,
on behalf of the company. Or so it's just kind of that growth mindset. It's almost like the entrepreneurial mindset as well.
yeah,
Entrepreneurs don't just have to be people that are going to run their own business. Companies love it if individuals have entrepreneurial mindsets, because then you're thinking up new ideas. So yeah, that's right. It's adopting that rather than having the fixed mindset, which can become quite negative, and it's not helpful for any of us. While saying that, I know it's not easy and it can be discouraging.
yeah,
And that's why it's so good to have someone to talk to,
yeah.
about these things, kind of having that accountability, etc.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. And how can someone, in your opinion, balance the need for financial stability with the desire of finding, a purposeful career? And I'm talking for like, especially for young professionals, under or like less than 3 years of experience. Let's say, for example, like, recent graduates. I will take myself as an example. So I finished my master's, which in Scotland I paid for it, and I was like, okay, perfect. I have a master's in data analytics. I want to find a job that pays me 27,000 pounds. And I was looking at the market, and the market was very competitive, and I was like, I can't find a job. And then when I found one, they told me, oh, your salary will be 21,000. And it was so heartbreaking because, like, I have paid like 7,000 pounds for my master's, and here I am. Is that all I can do? But what I did, I was like, okay, I accepted the offer. And then within 9 months, I was able to get a promotion. And then that jumped my salary. Do I go for a job just to get my foot in? And how important is it to, have purpose and that financial stability?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I know, I do understand. And of course, you know, finances, all of that, it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's definitely, and I do, and we don't negate that. I think the first thing I would say
Mhm.
is my tendency tends to be go for what you love, go for what you're going to enjoy, what you're going to be, good at,
Mm.
and the money will follow.
Okay.
That's just an overlying principle. That's one thing. Another thing I would say is for some people, that's why the values is so important that we were speaking about earlier.
Yeah.
People understanding their top values, because for some people, a top value is making money, and money basically is
Yeah.
a top value, which that's not wrong.
Mm.
That's totally fine. And for someone, if that is their top value, then okay, they need to be going for all of that. I remember for me, I mean, I listened to your situation. I remember for me when I was a recent graduate, and of course, I had to work out how much money do I need, like, to be able to pay all the bills and do all that, so I did take the time to work that out.
Mm.
And then that becomes one of your career anchors,
Hmm.
that whatever job you go for, it has to be da da da
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
minimum salary.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So you're not just going in blind, you are thinking about it. But yeah, no, definitely it has to be a factor. But I think also it's back to this attitude thing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you performed very well in your first job because within 9 months you got promotion.
Yeah.
So it's having that attitude, working well, doing well, and you'll be recognized for it. Also, finally, just to say, especially for recent grads,
Mm.
they say that they'll change about every 2 years, kind
Hmm.
of, so there's that possibility as well. Okay, you start somewhere 21,000 or whatever,
Yeah.
but then you build up your experience, do a really good job. Within a couple of years, you can maybe potentially move somewhere else, and that's not a bad thing either,
Yeah.
which where it would be a slightly higher salary and you're working your way up like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have that question as well. So, in your opinion, like, is it a good thing or a bad thing to jump careers or jobs every 2 to 3 years for the better salary and for the better opportunity? Or how do you find that as a concept? Because I think Gen Z and millennials have that, whereas like the previous generation would be loyal in a company and just, grow within one company for like 30, 40 years.
That's right, totally. They say on average nowadays,
Mm.
someone will change career nine
Mhm.
times in their lifetime. That's change career, not just change job. Change
Wow.
career
Yeah.
9 times in their lifetime, which is amazing. So I'm
Yeah.
constantly saying to recent grads, I personally think it's totally fine to change
Yeah.
every 2 years. And we're used to that. The working world are used to that now. They know that that's, you know, they call there's a phrase amongst recruiters and employers and so on, war for talent. And we're still
Okay.
in that phase right now. And yeah, I know you just reflected on your own experience and you were kind of saying, oh, there aren't any jobs or whatever. But actually, on the other side, it's very much the talk
Mm.
amongst recruiters and employers. There's a war for talent. So they're looking, so I think really especially for graduates and so on, the potential is there. And it's
Yeah.
about being clever about these moves as well, not just doing it randomly, but thinking it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We're going to speak about that clever aspect of it later on. So another question I have for you, right? For in kind of tying it up with what we were talking before, if someone with 3 years experience, right, up to 3 years of experience, feels this unfulfillment, right? They don't feel fulfilled in their job. As you said before, 2 out of 3 do not love what they do. What steps would you recommend for these people to reassess their career path? What are the exercises, or like what can they do to kind of like revalue, their career path?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I would, if I was talking to them in a one-to-one session, I
Mhm.
would just encourage them. Well, first of all, I'd just say to them, okay, take a step back. Obviously continue in that job you're in. I don't recommend leaving a job with nothing else to go to. So I think it's because I think that just adds stress and pressure,
Mm. Yeah.
So obviously continue in the job you're in, but take some time just to, like you say, reevaluate. And if I was with them in a session, the first question I would say to them is, I'd say, don't worry if you can't answer this, but I'm just going to put a question to you out of curiosity. If it was a dream world and anything was possible and there was no barriers, etc., what would you love to be doing? And kind of
Mm,
paint that picture for me, and it could be 5 years, 10 years down the line. Just paint a picture. What's the ultimate goal? What's the ultimate destination? Because then I say to them, it's a bit like getting in your car. If you don't know where you're going, you're just going to get in and be driving around randomly. Whereas most of us, we program our sat navs or Google Maps or whatever with our destination,
mm,
and then we
yeah.
work out our route map as to how to get there. Now, that scenario I'm just talking about in the one-to-one situations with people, sometimes occasionally people are not able to articulate to me what their ultimate goal is.
Hmm.
And that's okay, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So then we start even further back
Yeah.
and we do all the work I was talking about before, where we start looking at interests and we just kind of start asking these kind of questions just to draw stuff out. Sometimes people are so stressed and so, their head is just so full of stuff. It is there, but we've got to unblock some stuff before we can get there. So that's what we do. But with other people who are able to articulate what this kind of dream or ultimate goal is, they're 10 out of 10, so to speak, then
Hmm.
we have that there. And then we come back and we say, right, now let's think, what are some milestones? Not the little in between action steps to get to the milestones, but just what are some milestones? Just brainstorm them, brain dump them that would get you to that ultimate goal. And then we map them out on the route map and then we order them as to which milestone would come first. And
Yeah.
then we look at the tiny stepping stones to get to the
Hmm.
milestones,
Yeah.
and then it's almost like you've worked out a project plan.
Yeah. 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 Well, it does sound like a project, but I love the idea of breaking down a big goal into smaller goals. Do you think there is do you think age plays a role when changing a career or going back for further education? And I want to give you an example. I have some colleagues at work where they have been working at the company for like 2 years now, and they're at that stage that they just are not sure what to do, right? And some of them have gone back to education, for a master's and a diploma, and others are like, yeah, I'm just trying to figure it out and like working hard and etc. And my perspective is that because society sometimes puts this pressure on age, by 30 you should do what you love, you should have a family, or you should have a partner to start your family, etc. And maybe that limits them with what they can do, or the options that they have. So in your opinion, do you think age plays a role when it comes to changing a career or going back for further education?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you've put your finger on, yeah, a topic that does affect people and impact people. And I think you're absolutely right in everything you're saying about so many societal expectations. A certain age,
Mm,
you should be doing certain things.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's right. And I think it does add a certain amount of pressure, really, to people. Um, but in saying that, I would just encourage people, age, no matter how old you are, is not a barrier.
Yeah.
You know, I heard of someone 50, I think they are, and they've just kind of changed career and they've signed up and they got into the civil service graduate scheme.
Well,
So that this 50-year-old's on the graduate scheme. Of course, they've had a career up till now, but they're there with kind of all the 20-year-olds or whatever.
yeah.
That's okay. That's absolutely fine. You know, I mean, in Japan again, just to mention,
Yeah.
as I'm sure you're aware, they have like longest life expectancy in the world. And I heard of someone, he worked in the post office till he was 65, retired. Then he became a farmer until he was 95,
No.
then stopped that. Then he started doing something else.
Yeah.
It's so inspirational. I
Yeah.
think, really, I understand society puts these pressures, puts these expectations, but, you know, another saying, and this time it was my dad that said this one to me,
Hmm.
and I thought actually that is really so useful. He
Mm,
said, comparison is the thief of joy.
yeah.
Hmm. So if we're and I try to say that to students and young people because I think they're affected so much by worrying about what others are doing, what others are thinking of them or
Yeah.
whatever. Instead, you carve out your own path. We're all
Yeah.
different, just like we've been saying.
Yeah. And especially I think with social media today that, um, you have so many people being making money, and they say, oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber, I'm going to be like, maybe up to a certain point for myself as well, oh, I'm going to become a podcaster, but like the thing is, like, going back to what you said about having a dream, and like, if you couldn't fail, what would you do? And I think for me, that's the inspiration, like, doesn't matter the age that you are. I agree, like, you can do and start all over again, and
Mhm.
age shouldn't be a barrier for that.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's back to attitude again and
Attitude.
mindset
Yeah.
and believing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No.
believing.
Yeah. Believe in yourself, I think,
Hmm.
is very important. Yeah. This is my recent realization that, like,
Hmm.
it all starts with believing in yourself and your abilities, that you can actually do something that you love and have a career that you love. You just need to put the work.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's
Uh,
right.
you said before about, like, being clever in this kind of like competitive environment, right? What role does networking play in finding a career direction and purpose? And how can young professionals build a strong professional network?
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you touched on networking because I'm so passionate about networking. And
Okay.
it was
Okay.
in my mind, oh, I've not mentioned networking yet.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, yeah, it's vital. I
Mm.
cannot emphasize it enough. Now, I do appreciate that that word networking frightens a lot of people, or they
Mm.
don't like it. They don't like the word. Um, and so I say to people, networking really, it just means speaking to people.
Yeah.
That's it. It just means, that's it. It's just having a conversation. It's not anything different to that, really. So, yes, in terms of recent graduates and how can they use networking to their advantage, etc. Well, one thing, you've already got a ready-made group of alumni, so
Mm.
it's kind of having some kind of connection. So let's imagine someone studied at Edinburgh, they can go onto LinkedIn, they can look up the University of Edinburgh LinkedIn page. There's an alumni tab. They can click on that. They
Yeah.
can see 188,000 alumni from all around the world. They can see what organizations people are working in, what they studied, blah, blah, you know, and they can reach out to those people, on LinkedIn, and they can
Yeah.
just say, oh, hi, I see you studied at Edinburgh. I'm currently studying there or just graduated. Um, oh, and now you're working in investment banking or whatever it is. And then rather than asking them for a job, which is
Mm.
embarrassing for that person and for the individual, instead you just say something like, oh, I would love to hear your career story. Do
Mm.
you have 20 minutes available? So essentially you're buttering them up
Yeah.
because people love to talk about themselves,
Sure.
so some people will ignore them or they never go on LinkedIn or whatever. That's fine. But some people will reply because they remember what it was like being a student them, and they want to give something back.
Yeah.
But and then I say to people, take the time, ask questions. What do you like? What do you not like? Da da da. Hear their career story, show an interest
Mm.
because all the time you're making an impression. You're
Yeah.
building rapport with that person.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the call, you say something like, oh, what advice would you give to someone like me that's kind of interested in getting into this area? Because that's a roundabout way of hint, hint, and you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. That day they may have had a meeting. We actually need someone to help with da project or whatever. If you come across well, psychologically, subconsciously in their mind, they might be thinking, they might say something, we've heard that story before. And then the other key thing to say to the person is obviously you thank them for the time and then you say, oh, is there anyone else in your network that you could connect me with?
Yeah.
And then they do the hard work for you.
Yeah.
They reach out to their friend and that person obviously will respond because
Yeah.
they know them,
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that I really do encourage people. And of course, when I talk to people about that, they say, oh, but that all takes time. Yes, it does. But it's
Sure.
back to this attitude thing again,
Yeah.
and I say to them, we have to approach our job hunting in the same way as we would approach doing our actual job.
Yeah.
And employers recognize all this as well. They think, wow, if you're kind of showing this amount of dedication, all the rest of it, and preparation, yeah, but no. So that, and then, I mean, there's so many opportunities for people to either go to online networking events,
Hmm.
in-person networking events,
Yep.
meet people. But yeah, no, I can't encourage it enough.
Yeah. Is there any research that you have heard of, or like, what's your personal experience with like the younger generation and like building networks? Are they good? Are they bad? And I'm specifically talking about like, 1996 and above, right? So 28 and under. Like, are they good at networking, or do you feel like maybe they're a little bit too glued on their social media and they don't really value networking?
I know it's an interesting question
Yeah.
because often when I talk to people about, doing those information interviews, as we call them, where
Okay.
you're asking
Interesting.
to hear someone's career story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I talk to them about that and explain all the process, and they're listening. And then the last question I say to them is, I said, oh, so how do you feel about doing something like this? And that's when you gauge, are they
Mm.
actually going to do it or not?
Yeah.
Like, and again, I mean, I'm so interested in confidence, I've got to say, and how
Interesting.
you
Okay.
build someone's confidence. Because
Mm.
I find no matter the age group of the people, all this kind of stuff is linked to confidence.
Interesting.
And
Mhm.
yeah, and so the ones, so there are some who say, oh, yeah, wow, that's really great. Yes, I'm going to reach out, and I know they're going to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas there's others who maybe are lacking confidence a bit more and they're like, oh, will they really respond? And oh, and you just get a sense. So I don't know if it's so much that it's social media that's holding them back, or is it this lacking?
Hmm.
And I think that could be a whole other podcast conversation
I can,
about
yeah,
how do you help, build the confidence.
yeah.
Hmm.
If you don't mind, let's talk a little bit briefly about confidence. So, for example, you know, how do you build confidence, right? In a one-to-one, how do you build confidence?
Yeah, I know. It's something I'm looking into right now myself because it comes up so much.
Mm,
Um, but I always just encourage people, to be honest, especially if we've got a longer session, the conversation will become more open. And
mm,
then sometimes I will just say, obviously, but I'll just say, I notice maybe there's some hesitation here. Is that to do with lacking confidence? And then sometimes person will open up a bit more about that. And then we'll talk about it. And then I just say, you know, if you can just take one step, just
yeah,
do one thing,
yeah,
that's what builds their confidence. So if they can just pluck up the courage, even to reach out, to have
yeah,
that first conversation, and you know it yourself from kind of
hmm,
doing the podcast, I guess, from doing your first one,
yeah,
you build your confidence in doing it. And it's the same with all of us.
yeah,
That's how that's how we build confidence. I
yeah,
mean, I'm not a psychologist, what everyone psychologists would say. There's lots of other factors. Of course, we
mm,
don't all have the same start in life.
sure,
Our upbringings, families, all these kind of things can impact. And that's, we totally understand that. However, okay, the point you're at now, it's like, okay, how can you build confidence from here, from this
mm,
point? It's just trying to take even those small steps. And that's why the route map I was speaking about
mhm.
before is it comes into play as well, those little action steps.
Yeah, exactly. I do agree. And especially with what you're saying about like kind of the route, right? The smaller it is, the easier it is to trick kind of your brain to do it. Let's say, for example, like if I were to reach out to like the CEO of a Fortune 500 or a FTSE 100, I wouldn't have the confidence. But the smaller step is to reach to a CEO of an Edinburgh based company, right? Like a startup, a smaller company, and then build up to a medium company, to a large company, da.
Yes.
Because like, and also, yeah, I find this so important. And also, yeah, I agree with you. Like with the podcast, like practice makes perfect, or like, like practice really helps. And in the beginning, my emails, like with reaching out to people, were like a little bit off and people would not reply. But now, after reaching out to, I don't know, 20, 30 people, I know what the email should have in, what I should say to kind of like get people on the podcast. With practice, the questions become better, the content becomes better, and therefore I'm building my confidence on this podcasting kind of like side thing I'm doing right now. So I think, yeah, with confidence, I think it's like practicing it and like repetition,
Absolutely. And it's trying,
trying.
it's
Mhm.
taking that first step. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah,
No,
totally.
100%. And what do you think is the role of mentorship? So we talked about networking, right? So reaching out to people, but how about mentorship in career development? What's your take about mentors?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. And I would encourage everyone. to get a mentor.
Yeah.
So that's my, basic. And building on that, many universities have recognized the importance of mentoring and mentorship, and they run mentoring programs.
Mm.
Um, Universities are so large and so huge, a lot of students don't know about these kind of things. So I would
Yeah.
encourage anyone who's listening, if you're a student, even if you're a recent grad, you may still be able to apply and get linked into the university's mentoring scheme. And if you're not a student or recent grad, or that doesn't apply to you, then within your networks that you're building, really try to find a mentor just through asking people. And again, people are often quite privileged to
Mm.
feel, oh, someone wants me, you know, and it doesn't have to be a lifetime commitment. I
Yeah.
think that's the important thing when you talk to a mentor. It's about up to 6 sessions,
Okay.
and that could be in person, online, and that's, and they're giving, obviously, with a mentor, it's slightly different because they're giving advice, and and they can help connect you up with other people that they know. If it's a mentor within a particular industry, if you know what direction you're going in, that's what I would encourage people to do, find a mentor within that industry. And so mentorship then is slightly different to coaching, where
Mm.
coaching is they're not giving advice, but
Hmm.
it's more they're kind of, just asking questions really to kind of get you to move from one position to another.
Yeah. And I think also, can we relate it with networking? For example, you reach out to someone uh, within the industry that you want to go into, let's say investment banking, right? And then, maybe you will get a job within investment banking. And then that person that you reached out, you know, maybe can become kind of like a mentor, or like you work for his company, you know what I mean? Like that example, as you said before. And then that person can become your mentor. Networking can lead to that mentorship as well.
Hmm. Yeah, totally, totally.
Mm.
That's right. Yeah, and for a lot of people, as I say, they'll feel privileged to be asked.
Yeah.
Um, I was just remembering when you were talking, I was thinking to myself, it just came to my mind about a former boss from
Okay.
Yorkshire
Uh-huh.
that she said to me, Lisa Rose, if you don't ask, you don't get. And
True.
that's another saying that's really stuck in my mind. I thought, and that's to do with this confidence thing as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes just ask.
Yeah.
The worst that can happen is the person says, oh, no, I'm really sorry, I'm busy with this, that, whatever. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. At least
Yeah.
you've asked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I do agree with you. And I think on that, like, for example, like, the mindset I have as well is that, like, you only need one person. You
mhm,
only need one job. You know what I mean? Like, you only need just one interview to start with. Let's say, for example, like, I remember my first one was I was reaching out to financial advisors. Um, and yeah, I had to reach like to 10 different financial advisors. Like, five of them did not even reply. Two kind of like, we don't know. And then eventually, like, I found one that said yes. And I was like, perfect. I only need one, like that's the
uh-huh.
case. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Um,
No, interesting. And then how would you go about, like, what is some advice for individuals to find and cultivate these mentorship relationships?
hmm. Yes. Well, as I say, if people are students and universities do run these schemes, I would hook
Mm.
into one of those first of all, if that's practical. And then if that's not, then it is going to be kind of like we were saying before about the networking,
Mhm.
building your network. And there's lots of ways to find networking events as well if you decide to
Yeah.
go down that route, rather than, because there's the two types of networking. There's reaching out to people who are alumni, you've got something in common with them, like you both studied at the same university or whatever, and just trying to build that way. But you can do
Mm.
lots of things at the same time. So I'd probably say to people, do it all. So do that, but then also look up different networking events. So people may have heard of meetup.com.
Mhm.
But, that's a great way, because there's all sorts of groups that are meeting, whether it's to do with your interests, like photography or dancing or whatever, learning Japanese. I've
Yeah.
learned that one. So meetup.com, you can find your group. But
Mm.
there's also meetups to do with business, so
Yeah.
there's meetups, there's entrepreneurs, there's marketing, all that kind of fun thing, and that can be a good way just to make contacts. You just never know who you're going to meet within that.
Yeah.
Um, Volunteering, that could be another route for some people as well. It doesn't have to be, again, a huge commitment. It could be volunteering once a week, once a month.
Yeah.
You just never know again who you're going to meet, or someone that's also a volunteer and their husband or their wife is da da da. And then as well as that, there's findnetworkingevents.com. There's networking events online, Eventbrite.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There's even, I was talking to someone yesterday and I said to them, they're interested in getting into med tech,
Mm,
and I said, what about, there'll be conferences happening all around the UK on that kind of topic, you
yeah.
know, try to get into these conference, it's basically just blag your way. It's a bit like that movie from a long time ago, Catch Me If You Can,
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio, where he just, based on a true story,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
just, if you've got the confidence, you can do it. So get
Yeah.
into some of these, get into some of these conferences. Again, you never know who you'll meet, show an interest.
Yeah.
And then we were speaking about, again, this was with another person, you were mentioning social media.
Mm,
People that you're interested in, you think, okay, they're saying interesting things, da da da. Follow them on Twitter, or X it is now,
yeah.
comment on what they're saying, da da da, all
Yeah.
these kind of different methods.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I like the kind of the last point that you said. Like everything it was perfect as well, but like for me, commenting on LinkedIn, right? So for example, like I follow a few people that I like their career, and I also kind of would like to have them on the podcast. So basically, rather than only liking their post, which is kind of passive, right? We all kind of can do that, but what's more kind of like putting yourself out there is a comment, right?
Mhm.
And I had this nice discussion with someone this weekend, and it was like a 2 3 comments, right? Like nothing exciting, but like, oh, this person replied to me straight away, and if I were to reach out to him now, he will be like, oh, I had that, you know 2 or 3 messages with him on Sunday. So they may be more keen on kind of responding to me, right? And they might be more open to me. So I agree with you. I think like the comments is not a hack, but like it's very important. Liking is not okay, yeah, whatever. But like a comment, a nice, thoughtful comment
Exactly.
can also
Oh,
help.
yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, yeah. We had some LinkedIn training, refresher training recently,
Mhm.
and the trainer said exactly what you've just said.
Yeah.
Don't just like things, because it is like, I mean, it's fine to do that, but it's more passive. But if you want to really engage, comment,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
totally.
Coming now from a kind of perspective that the current job market is very competitive, right? I have a couple of questions. What strategies would you recommend for standing out in a competitive job market, particularly that is highly sought after industries? Let's say it's like, mm, finance, or like, for example, tech and etc. So what are some strategies to stand out?
Mhm. It's all about it's all about tailoring, okay?
Okay.
So that means getting focused, tailoring your documents. So when I
Hmm.
say that, your CV, you know, I say to people, a CV is not just a formal document where you write down all the stuff you've ever done and then that's it, and it's all kind
Yeah.
of dry and dusty and boring and you've got it all in date order and blah blah. No, a CV is a marketing document. It's
Mm,
you on paper.
yeah.
As humans, we all judge each other within the first minute,
Yeah.
but if we can't see each other, we can't hear, we literally don't see that person. All we see is this document. It
Mm,
has to market you. So, and it's making that document, that CV, making it absolutely tailored to whatever that role is that you're going for.
yeah.
So I can't emphasize that enough, and so many people don't do it, but those that
Mhm.
do, you're making life easy for the recruiter by telling them, if you've got some relevant experience, put it in a section up near the top of the CV called relevant experience. Have a
Yeah.
section at the top, your professional profile. A short summary they can read in 3 seconds, because they're skimming these documents in between 8 and 20 seconds. But
Yeah.
that professional profile, they will read in detail because they want to understand who you are, what experience you've had until now, relevant for the role you're going for, what direction you're trying to go in. Yeah. So kind of having it focused. I can't emphasize that enough. That really does help. Cover letter. If you're asked to submit a cover
Mhm.
letter, I'm constantly saying to people, instead of, and it's with all due respect, because everyone's done great and
Yeah.
wonderful things, and we'll feel we want to tell our life story. No, that just gives the recruiter a headache. You know, you don't,
Yeah.
instead, you get the job description, you look at the part where it says, to be successful in this role, you'll need to have, and all those bullet points, you know, and you
Mhm.
basically like a jigsaw technique. With your cover letter, you're just kind of saying, you're almost using some of their words to say, okay, excellent
Yeah.
communication
Yeah.
skills or whatever. Oh, I have excellent communication skills as demonstrated when I worked at, or as when I hosted my podcast or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just keep making everything, because for the recruiter, then they've got their tick boxes of what they're looking for that role. And if you psychologically, subconsciously, if you're ticking all the boxes, then these documents, all you want them to do is open doors for you for the next stage, i.e., get an
Yeah.
interview, and then you can come across in person yourself. And that
Yeah.
tailoring and that branding, it's for your documents, but it's also for your
Hmm.
profile. We've been talking about social media and online, you know, so like your LinkedIn profile, making sure that that is tailored, branded. You know, I was speaking to someone yesterday, oh, the
Yeah.
medtech person, that's right. You know, and we were looking at her LinkedIn profile, and I said, well, at the moment, this you want to get into this area, you haven't mentioned tech or medtech or anything anywhere, you know, in the headline, in the about section, because they say that they're the three most important parts of the LinkedIn profile are smiling photograph. people
Okay.
people
Interesting.
want to employ friendly
Yeah.
people. Do you know what I mean?
Smiley, happy people.
Smiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, yeah, that's right.
That's
And again,
funny.
it's humans. First thing we look at
Yeah.
when we look at LinkedIn profile, the photograph, you know, it's just
Yeah.
the natural, yeah. So
Yeah.
photograph really important. The heading underneath your name, you know, the
Okay.
slashes. Yeah.
Hmm.
So just make sure you use that to the best, get the keywords in there that you want in.
Yeah.
And then the about section, that
Mm.
profile part, that about,
Yeah.
get your message out there too. Because then after that, it's really, you've done this, you've done that, da da da. That's the part they tend to scroll through.
Yeah. 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 Let's touch a little bit on social media. The other question I have is, do you think it's important for young professionals to develop a personal brand on social media to attract those kind of job opportunities?
Yeah, I would say absolutely, absolutely. And especially if people are, you know, in any area, really, in any area. And I mean, I'm speaking about LinkedIn because I love LinkedIn. I think it's
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
Use it all the time. And any students or grads I come across who are not on LinkedIn yet, I tell them it's the main platform that people use, you know, for recruiting.
Yeah.
Um, I suppose other social media platforms,
Hmm.
people, you know, of course, many of those are LinkedIn's the most professional one. So all
Yeah.
the others, you know, are for fun and social life, da da da. But at the same time, I still tell them be careful about
Yeah.
how you're coming across on them, because
Yeah.
some recruiters will do extra investigation and will look at some of those platforms as well.
Yeah.
So just be careful. You know, I appreciate, and others do as well, that it's not that you have to be wearing a suit in all your pictures or whatever, and just, you know,
Yeah.
but just be mindful of how you're coming across.
Yeah, I had this thought that like for example, for someone who again, let's use finance as an example, right? As you mentioned before, right? We all have our own unique fingerprints and we all have our own interests. So I think it's very important to show what we are interested in on social media and especially, using LinkedIn. If you're interested in finance, if you're interested in the stock market, start writing posts. Why not? Because like again we go back to the confidence or maybe the fear of like being ridiculated and like nobody liking our posts, right? But at the same time you're doing it for the future. Hey, this is my personal opinion about the stock market. I find that kind of useful, and this is something I have started doing now with the podcast. Like for me the podcast gives me a purpose to post on social media. Hey, look at me, like I work in finance, but on the side I'm doing this thing. And, a future recruiter might see that and say, like, oh, this guy is like, proactive. He's doing something creative, he has a creative outlet, and that's good. So what do you think on that? Yeah.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, you know, and I'm constantly, it's great to hear about what you're doing, and I'm constantly encouraging people to do similar things. Yeah,
Mm,
that's right. Absolutely. Again, it's just when you were talking, again, sometimes I get the comments,
yeah.
oh, that's a lot of extra work or da, da, da. So it's back to that mindset thing again.
Yeah.
Well, how motivated are you to get into this? Because it's competitive, it's hard. You've got to stand out. Yes, I couldn't agree more. Writing articles, posts,
Yeah.
yep, all
Yeah.
of that. Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, blogs,
Yeah.
vlogs,
Yeah.
all this, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Like sorry. Like technology now has made it so easy for everyone to film themselves. Like, we all have phones that have good enough cameras, right? Like, film yourself. Yes, it will be silly in the beginning, or if you don't like, to see your face, as you said, right? And I find that so important. Yeah, I find that very important. And I think, yeah, it's a very good advice. How important do you think is continuous learning and skill development to find and maintain a fulfilling career?
Oh, again, I think I keep saying
Yes.
vital or so important, but yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, continuous learning. I mean, never stop learning. And yeah, I just think it's so important. I myself use LinkedIn Learning. And
Hmm.
again, I think that's a great, fantastic platform. There's shorter courses, longer ones. But yes, I would encourage a lot of people to be doing things like that in whatever way they can continue learning. And even as we were just talking about, in whatever field you're interested in. So again, just using finance as the example that you mentioned, if someone is really keen to get into this, and they're trying to get into different areas, then there's short courses they can be doing just to help
Hmm.
boost. And then they can get those short courses added onto their LinkedIn profile, onto their CV. And again, it shows the employer actually this person is really committed, motivated. They're doing this in their spare time. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
etc. Hmm.
Yeah, I do agree. And especially like with finance, like even professional qualifications, depending, like, is it um, investment operations or, like, for example, investment banking? Like, there's so many, like, even professional qualifications, I think, are even more important. The last question for you: what do you think is more important, a meaningful career or a meaningful life? And what has your experience taught you?
Mm, interesting. Um, I mean, it makes me think about the ikigai thing again,
Yeah.
about the Japanese. And there's a book about it people can get on Amazon. I'm halfway through reading it myself. But they've based
Mhm.
this whole concept on the people of Okinawa, which is one of the southernmost islands in Japan, where they've got the longest life expectancy in the world. And really,
Mhm.
the whole thing is based around how the people live. So it's their lives. And that's what I say
Yeah.
when I'm talking to people and we're having a career counseling, career coaching session, and it's a longer session so we can go a bit deeper, and you
Mm.
often find career and some of the decisions that our people are trying to make and so on, it's it's almost like a network, like a web. It impacts so many other aspects of our lives. I was
Yeah.
speaking to someone recently, a lady, mid 30s, thinking about her career, etc. But linked into that is also, about when she's going to have children and different, just think, so it's life,
Life.
and that's that whole thing. So
Yeah.
I would say to answer your question, meaningful career or meaningful life, I would honestly encourage people, why can the two not go together?
Yeah.
Why do the two have to be separate? And
Yeah.
that's what I would say. It's that 10 out of 10 thing again. It's the ultimate goal. When I talk to people about that, I'm saying to them, talk to me about your dream, your dream life, really. What does it look like? Okay, yes, about work, but then also speak to me about where are you living, what, et cetera, because the whole thing is linked together, I would say.
Yeah.
And it's when we manage to find that, I would say that's when we're going to be the happiest and most fulfilled.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I couldn't agree more. Hey, Lisa Rose, where can people find you and reach out to you if they want any advice on career?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, of
Of
course,
course.
on LinkedIn, as we've been speaking about so much already. So if people look for me on LinkedIn, Lisa-Rose and then Muller,
Perfect.
Moller, and send me a message on LinkedIn, I'd be more than happy to speak with them. As I said right at the beginning, I do for freelance career coaching and leadership coaching as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
please do reach out, and I'd be delighted to speak with anyone about any of these topics and work with them uh, to
Yeah.
realize their
Yeah.
purpose and reach their potential.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think it's so important, and I think it's worth the investment. I think as we said in the beginning, like you spend like I don't know, like a third of your life working, right? And finding what your values are, what your compass is, your ikigai. I think it's so important, and I think it's worth the investment. Yeah,
Totally, totally.
wonderful, lovely,
Yes.
Lisa. Thank you so much for your time as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to you too. It's been great speaking with you. Thank you for the conversation.
No, my pleasure. Bye
Uh,
bye.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.